This is Disclosure Now with Archimwa, the show where we expose the truth that is nefariously hidden from humanity. Today's guest is Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress. Jessica is a powerful remote viewer and a seasoned investigator of paranormal phenomena. We will be discussing the spiritual world that is all around us, waiting for us to tune into it.
Okay, welcome to the show, Jessica. How are you doing?
Hey, Arkeem, I'm doing excellent. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thanks. It's about time I had you on the show. By the way, I got Kat right here. You can kind of see her in the corner.
Hey, Kat.
But anyway, that she has some testimony to kind of add later, but so she'll just kind of be hanging out right here.
Yep.
But yeah, we met at the Journey to Truth conference. Jessica and I did, and that's kind of how I got introduced to you, is by meeting you in real life, and then at the Montauk adventure tour that James put on, which you ended up being a big part of that, and we'll get into that in this interview as well. The importance of you being there, and yeah, that's just kind of a how I got to know you, but I don't really know like the beginning of your story and where it all starts and what got you to the point where we're both in this kind of circuit and we know each other. Maybe you can start there and just kind of just explain like how you became the Cryptid Huntress, which I know you touched upon that a little bit during our trip to Montauk, but maybe give a detailed explanation to the viewers.
Awesome. I would love to. I have no idea how I got here. Okay. I'm not going to lie. It's been a wild journey for me. I am actually a Bigfoot field researcher. Okay. And I've been doing that for a long time. I started off doing Bigfoot field research back in 2011. And I'll tell you the story behind all that. But just to give you a quick overview, I started doing Bigfoot field research with an actual research team out in the field. I'm from Georgia, and we have a lot of Bigfoots here in the North Georgia mountains and all over the South. And so I became a member of this team and have been doing boots on the ground field research since then. I'm a member of 3 different research teams where we go out in the woods actively quite often doing field research. And while we're doing the Bigfoot field research, we've had encounters with aliens, ETs, light beings, you name it, all sorts of other stuff. I mean, every kind of pretty much cryptid you can think of. It seems like we've experienced something. My team is pretty well known. One of my teams is pretty well known for encountering a portal. We documented this portal. We sent 2 team members into the portal. They disappeared, and we have it documented. And they came back. So that was out in the field while we were doing paranormal Bigfoot field research. Okay, so yeah, I became a Cryptid Huntress through doing. Okay,
because it sounds like once you go out there and you're in the field, you realize there's way more to it than just Bigfoot, right?
Oh man, I'm gonna totally get into that. Absolutely, it's so much more from the very first time I went out there. Now, fast forwarding to today. I never went public with my research for 10 years. Okay. I kept it under wraps. Back when I first started researching, it was not really cool to be a Bigfoot researcher. Okay. I mean, to me it was. I thought it was great. But it wasn't like widely accepted. Like nobody had a Bigfoot sticker on the back of their car back then. Okay. Today, there's so many, like you'll see cars with them. There's TV shows about it. Back then there were no TV shows that I can think of. Really with about Bigfoot. So yeah, so I kept it under wraps. I actually worked I worked in state government. I was the director of a women's organization, and I just didn't feel the need to tell everybody that, hey, I'm out there chasing Bigfoot every weekend, and stuff like that. But that's what I was doing back then. But I didn't go public, and let's fast forward to like 2020, right? And the head of one of my teams, his name's Trey Hudson. He wrote a book called The Meadow Project, Explorations into the South Skinwalker Ranch. Okay. Now, he's the head of one of my teams, ASOG, that's Anomalous Studies and Observation Group. And that had a bunch of our field research in there. And, we had previously signed NDAs. We don't really talk about a lot of our research. But when he wrote that book and included a lot of the stuff that we had experienced out in the field, it shot him straight up to like coast to coast AM and got a lot of attention. People wanted to take our story and like documentarians and things like that, but it put our research out there into the public. So therefore, I was asked to speak at a conference. I guess they found out that I was part of that team, and I just happened to go hang out with one of my girlfriends at one of she was volunteering at Camp Disclosure, and I went up there to go hang out, and the head of Camp Disclosure was like, they was told that like, hey, that's Jessica from that Meadow Project, and she was like, hey, will you speak at my conference? I said, sure, I'll speak at it. I spoke there, went on some, I was asked by my friend Paula, who was there at the show, or at the conference. Paula Astria, she asked me to come on her show and her podcast and talk. And I did. And I talked about my research after that conference. And from there, I got my own radio show. And I'm at Spaced Out Radio now. Now I'm the Cryptid Huntress. Okay. And I'm very public with what I do. But it wasn't the case. So that's how I became the Cryptid Huntress. Now I'm going to backtrack a little bit, and I'm going to tell you, Arkeem, about how I started Bigfooting. Okay. And what happened the first time I ever went out Bigfooting. Okay. So I got a call from my mom. She said, hey, Jessica, I'm going to this meeting on Wednesday night. There's these guys there who are Bigfoot field researchers, and you're going to love this. You should come with me. It's right up your alley. And my mom was going to these like weekly meetup meetings at her friend's house in here in Marietta, Georgia, Mr. Sam's house. And everybody knows Mr. Sam, that's in the, I don't want to say alternative community, but like paranormal, psychics, that kind of stuff. He'd have different speakers every week at his house, and everybody would go hang out. And I had been attuned to the paranormal my entire life. I had seen ghosts when I was a kid. I had an affinity for looking at the sky at night and watching for UFOs ever since I was a little kid. I was the kind of kid that like I always put the teddy bears and stuff around my bunk bed because I was afraid something was going to grab me, and I felt like things were watching me all the time because I just had that connection to, I don't know what, I don't know if it's ghosts. Looking back now, I think it could have been ETs. I don't know. But yeah, I would go out at night. I lived on a farm out in the country, and I would go look for UFOs at night. I would do my projects for science on like black holes, stuff like things that like little kids normally don't really get interested in right away. And so I was really into like science. Well, it was called science fiction. To me, it's fact, a lot of that stuff, but really into that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm not going to tell you how old I am exactly, but this was in 2011 when I went to that meeting with the Bigfoot stuff. Prior to that, I had lost a lot of relatives and loved ones. My brother had died in a car accident. Two of my best friends had died tragically in different ways. Half my family had passed away. It was wild. Like I went through a lot of loss. Okay. And so I had gotten curious with like ghost hunting and psychic abilities and things like that, because I knew that I came from a long line of women in my family, from my great grandmother to my grandmother to my mom to me, and probably way beyond that. Very, very psychic, but none of us they wouldn't call it that. As a matter of fact, my great grandmother and my great aunt, they lived up in North Georgia. Well, back in the 1980s, okay, not only were they very psychic, they could see dead people. Okay. But they were driving down the road one night on the highway, and a light came down over their car. And you can imagine what happened. They said there was like a flash of light, light enveloped their car as they were driving down the highway. And the next thing they know, it was like an hour or 2 hours later, and they were a county or two over, and they had no idea how they got there. Okay. And that was in the 1980s. So that's not the only paranormal type story that happened in my family. I come from one of those families where people weren't scared to talk about weird stuff that happened with the ghost in their houses, and a ball of fire that came out of the woods when my great grandmother was dying, and it circled the house and went inside the house and all that kind of stuff. That stuff ran in my family. So when I was into all this weird paranormal ghost stuff and Bigfoot. Nobody really made fun of me in my family because it was part of us, part of what our family kind of was into and it had experienced. So I go to this meeting. Okay. And I meet these guys. They knew what they were talking about. I just wanted to know if Bigfoot was real. Okay. And I'm the kind of person, Arkeem, I will find out for myself. And I ain't scared, as we say here in the South, to kind of go out and try new things. And so I went to this meeting. I met these gentlemen. They had like pictures of evidence and foot casts and all that kind of stuff. And they took a different approach to it. They were very much into the mind, body, spirit aspect of Bigfoot. They didn't just go out there and say, oh, this is just flesh and bone, a primate in the woods. There's something more.
Yeah, I think that's really important to understand when it comes to the whole Bigfoot thing, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was digging it from the beginning. I was like, wow. So not only is there a Bigfoot, according to these guys, they are really into the psi aspect of it, like psychic telepathy aspect of Bigfoot and things like that. And I thought, man, that's really interesting. And I had a lot of questions for them. And after they got done with their presentation, I had my hand up and I was asking questions. It was a small room. There's only like 15 people in there. But I was like, okay, so if Bigfoot is real, and I do believe Bigfoot's real, where is a body? Like, why has nobody ever found a body? Where's the poop? Like, I'm a country girl. I've never seen any kind of poop. Not to say that I should be coming across Sasquatch poop, but they had kind of explanations for all this, and these are not just like everyday, just normal guys that just go out in the woods, like a bunch of rednecks going out in the woods or something. And yeah, I come from a family of those. Okay. So it's fun. But okay. But these guys are former military guys, wildlife biologists, nuclear scientists. I mean, these guys are like fire chiefs, like search and rescue guys. Upstanding dude, and know their stuff, survivalist, things like that. So I was asking, and they're like, well, one of them, the head of the team, he had been to the body farm and stuff. If you're familiar with the body farm, it's where they send people to learn about decomposing bodies, okay, like human bodies. I think like crime scene investigators go there, and maybe doctors. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure who all goes there, but there's things about like decomposing animals in the woods and stuff, and bodies, and you're not always going to find a body. Like, I've never come across the body of a bear, and there's bears in the woods. So they had valid points for all my questions. Let's just put it that way. And so they saw that I had an interest in what they were doing. And one of the guys was like, well, hey, why don't you come on an expedition with us? We're having an expedition next month, and you're welcome to join us. And I was like, well, what better way to find out if Bigfoot's real than going into the woods with a bunch of strange dudes by myself? Okay, sure, sign me up. And so I ended up going on this expedition with all these guys, and they had like invited a bunch of different people to go on this particular expedition. And I found out later it was because they were trying to get a big team, like a team together. And they were kind of testing people out to see who they wanted to bring onto their team. And let's just say I made the cut. Okay. I made the cut. And that's why I'm here with you right now talking about it. I went up to the North Georgia mountains, Arkeem. This is wild, actually, because from the very beginning, I had such a profound experience out in that field. It's almost like the universe kind of hooked me like right off the bat, so that I had to go forward with this. Okay. Like, it wasn't like I was just going to go home and be like, screw that. That's crazy. I had, the first night I went out there, I kind of thought like these things may have like some kind of supernatural ability or whatever, but I didn't know. I mean, I was just wanting to see like a big old gigantic Sasquatch in the woods. All I wanted to do was see one, or hear it or experience it. And I got way more than I bargained for, way more. So the first night I went out there, I was with, we had a big team. We set up at base camp, and we broke off into smaller teams. Okay. And I happened to go off with a group of like 5 or 6 dudes, like 5 men. And we went up to this place. It was like an open field. And they had said that these guys have been researching this area for a long time, for years. And they said, we have activity at this area. Let's field number 1 or whatever. Let's call it that. And see, we're like deep, deep, deep in the woods. Like it's not like easily accessible to anybody. And so we go to this field and I am like, all right, I'll be bait. They're joking around about making me Sasquatch bait. And I was like, all right, cool. You know, I wanted to have an experience. And so I said, yeah, they kept telling me, you know, Sasquatch likes women, you know, and I was like, all right, cool. I'm down for that. So the game plan was they were going to sit down at the bottom of the hill and I was going to walk up to the tree line. Okay. It's like a football field away, like 100 yards up to this tree line up a hill. And so I got out, I got my backpack on and I put on my big girl panties. I was like, all right, I'm doing it. And so I started walking. I knew these guys all were watching me through their FLIR and their thermal imaging cameras. And so I knew that I felt safe. Okay. And I started walking up this hill and I was a little nervous because I can feel energies, you know, and I'm very intuitive. And I got to tell you this, I played rugby for my college and I know what it feels like and what it sounds like when somebody's running up behind me to tackle me. And I wasn't expecting this, but as I got halfway up that hill, somebody started running up behind me and it felt like they were going to hit me or something. And so I braced myself for impact and I kept thinking, God, that is so not professional of these dudes to do this to me. Like, why would they try to scare me like this? And I was already nervous, you know, walking up there. And as this guy got up right behind me, he knocked my legs out from underneath me from behind. And I kind of jumped up in the air and then he ran past. But in my mind, it was like a person, but I looked and there was nobody there. Nobody. But I had clearly heard it. I clearly felt it. And I felt even like the gust of wind and everything. And as my legs got swept out from behind me, like a sweep, like a martial arts move or something.
I didn't see anything though.
I felt it. But I just didn't see anything.
Yeah.
But I felt it. And then it went right past me. And I kind of like lost my balance a little bit, but I didn't fall down. And I immediately thought, okay, that was so weird. And I was confused and I looked around to make sure I had not tripped over something because your rational brain wants to make sense of all this. Right.
Right.
But there's no sense to be made of it. And so I thought, well, they're watching me. I was like, okay, well, I can like cry about this and run or look like a total baby, or I can keep going. And so I just kept walking and I was like, all right, I'll figure this out later because I don't know what just happened. And I kept walking up towards a tree line. And by that time, somebody did walk up to check on me because they saw me kind of trip a little bit and be like, trying to get my balance. And the distress call was like me throwing my arms up in the air. So apparently, like I kind of threw my arms up in the air when I was like, but I didn't realize I had done it. So, but yeah, the guy was Craig. He walked back with me to go check out where I had kind of gotten my legs swept. There was nothing there for me to trip over at all. And he said that they did not see anything in their thermals or their FLIRs. So as we're talking about it, I walk up to the tree line and I get called to a certain area. And I kind of walk over there as Craig and I are talking. And one of the guys that was down at the bottom of the hill is watching through his thermal imaging camera. And I walk right over to in front of a tree and a Bigfoot peeked around and was staring at me from right in front of that tree. But I couldn't see it because I didn't have any kind of equipment with me or anything. So that was wild, right? So that was night number 1. Okay, night number 1. Now, can I prove that was a Bigfoot? No. Cloak Bigfoot? Maybe. I don't know what it was. Okay. I never label this stuff. Okay. Because I don't know for sure unless I see it. Okay. The second night we decided to go back up to that same spot. And I spent a whole day there with one of the guys. We decided to have like a little plan where we were going to go sit out there around 3 p.m. and we're going to stay there all night, hide in the woods, blend into the environment. And the team was going to come out around 9 o'clock that night. So the Bigfoot would walk out of the woods and trip over us, trying to look at them. That was the plan. Okay, so we get out there. We're just like waiting. We're not. I'm not going to say we're bored, but we were kind of waiting for like things to happen. And we started noticing things were kind of weird. Okay, there were lights in the sky that were moving in like triangular patterns. Okay, on the side of the mountain over beside us, a light showed up, a big like an orb kind of, but it was bright, and it kept moving in a horizontal line from side to side across the mountain. And we were, our rational brains again, we were thinking it was like a car going down a hill, but there's nowhere for a car to drive on that mountain. And then we thought, well, maybe it was like a flashlight, but then we realized it was on top of the trees. Okay, so when we saw that, our equipment started malfunctioning. Mine went forward an hour and his went backwards an hour, or vice versa. Batteries were dying. All this weird stuff started kind of happening, and I had a EVP recorder sitting on my knee. Okay, so the team comes out. They make all this noise. Red lights show up in the tree line right beside where we were sitting. The team thought it was us, but there were red lights in the tree line about 10 feet from where we were sitting. Okay, because the team didn't know where we were hiding. They made a bunch of noise. No Bigfoot showed up that night, right? But we knew that something weird had happened. We just didn't know what. Okay. Well, about a week later, I didn't have the heart to listen to that EVP recorder that I had. And about a week later, the head of that team listened to that recording with me together. And around the time my partner and I were sitting there and our equipment started malfunctioning, it sounded like bottle rockets were going off all around us. Like pew, 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 all around. But it was something that we never heard with our own ears.
Wow.
Well, that in addition to the red lights that were in the tree line, they were like robotic, like weird red lights that they thought were me and my partner out there. We knew something more had happened, but we just didn't know. Well, the head of my team is an amazing remote viewer. Okay, amazing, like one of the best. And he decided, he said, hey, well, I think, first of all, I want all of you guys to, and they, by the way, they did ask me to join their team after that weekend. He said, I want all of you guys to start reading up on alien abductions. And I thought, man, I thought I was coming out here to be a Bigfoot researcher. Like, what do aliens have to do with anything? Like, this is weird. And in addition to that, he and another guy on the team that were already remote viewed what had happened to us out there. And actually that light that we saw on the side of the mountain was a triangular craft. And it had a, let's just say like an ET in it. Okay. And it was out there checking us out, trying to figure out what we were doing out there. So that incident spawned him to not only tell us to learn about, start reading up on alien abductions and reading books like Communion and The Threat, things like that. But he said, hey, if you guys want, I'll teach you all remote viewing. And he said, it's not going to be easy, but if you guys are down for it, it's going to take a lot of time, and we're going to do it right. And it's you got to decide now. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So like our whole team was taught remote viewing over the next few years, basically. And as a team. And so we're able to go and like look into stuff deeper than, whatever meets the eye. Like if we have stuff that happens to us out in the field. So that's how that happened. And let's just say within the year, I'm going to say within weeks, months, I don't know. I don't remember how long it was. I started waking up at night and I had ETs in my bedroom after all this happened. So that's kind of where it went, Rakeem. Like it was not just Bigfoot at all for me and my experience. There was absolutely a connection between Sasquatch, and there's an ET element to all of this, I do believe. And like I said earlier, we've documented portals and stuff like that. And also the places that my team researches, there's missing people clusters and things like that. So that's another aspect to all of this that I do out in the field. I'm trying to figure out where are all these missing people going out of these
You
national.
ever done any remote viewing research on that?
Well, I am tasked with blind targets. Okay. And so I don't know what the target is until the person who tasked it decides to tell me or not. Okay. And I can tell you when I first started remote viewing and getting into it, some of my first targets were missing people. Okay. Those are my high priority targets. And yes, I have definitely looked into lots of missing people actually, and cold cases and things like that. Now, the majority of people that I have remote viewed that were missing, they were deceased. Okay, they were deceased. Some of the the David Politis wrote that series called Missing 411. Those are about people mostly out of national parks. And I have not delved into a lot of those cases personally, but I've looked into other cases with missing people. And like I said, a lot of them were deceased, the ones that I was tasked with. So, yeah.
Some of those David Politis kids, some of them ended up at Montauk.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and some of them are kids that get sent back through. I watched one of those documentaries about that one time with a friend of mine, and he doesn't know. I don't talk to him about Montauk and stuff, and he was just watching like a documentary on that guy, and it was really triggering because I recognized a couple of the kids' faces, and so that's where some of them went.
I worry about that too, especially I'm a mom, and I have a young child, and I have a hard time taking him out to the woods because of that. We did document what we consider to be a portal, but I got to tell you, Arkeem, I don't think that was a natural portal. And I know that our Earth has natural portals, okay, but this did not seem natural at all. And I felt as though it could be related to some sort of government or agency program or something, and it just made me wonder. And I know you have more insight on this stuff. But yeah, I mean, our team was out there trying to figure these things out, but I've always known there's something way more sinister going on out there in the woods. Not just with humans, but with the cryptids too.
Yeah, which also that ties into what happened. So I figured this literally just happened to me last night, so why not bring it up with the Cryptid Huntress and see what you have to say about it.
Yes, let's hear it.
If you want to start it out, she's right here to say what happened to you.
Yeah, so basically, like, we were just hanging out in the woods, right? And like I said something like, this feels like witchy weather. Like, this feels like there's like a coven of witches in the woods or something like that. And you were like, don't say that because then something weird will happen. And I was like sitting in the chair by the fire, and I was just kind of like idly like making like motions with my left hand, kind of like, if anyone in the audience has ever seen The Witcher, like he makes hand motions to cast the magic spells that he has. So it was kind of like that. And all of a sudden, like, it seemed like time just stopped for me, but I could still see my hand moving, and there was like white lights like following the motions of my fingers. But then it feels like something like attached itself to my arm, like right here. It grabbed it, and it was like this thing was holding onto my arm, and then my hand was it kept doing these movements by itself.
Wow.
Yeah, it was sort of like Evil Dead 2, where Ash's hand becomes possessed and he has to cut it off and replace it with a saw. and it was really freaking me out because it was really freaking me out because I've never had anything like that happen to me before. Like, weird stuff has happened to us, but it's always been when we're asleep, and like I've never seen anything or felt anything. But finally I had to like grab my wrists like this with my other hand and like shake it to get it to let me go. And then I was sort of second guessing myself because I've never had anything like that happen to me before. But I told him about it, and I was like, oh, maybe it was just the edible that I took or blah, blah, blah. But then literally like 15 minutes later, like it tried to take over you too.
Yeah, so what happened is like she's like, oh, this weird thing happened to me, like time froze, and like I was doing stuff with my hand, and I was like, well, wow. I was like, I don't. She's like, I don't know, I must just be like tripping or something,
Yeah.
like like gaslighting yourself, like there's nothing going on. And then like she was hanging out in the car, and I was sitting by the fire because we were camping up in the Upper Peninsula,
Mhm.
deep in the woods, and I could see off in the distance this black blob, and it's just got a white head on it with two eyes and another one. It's just black holes for eyes and like another little hole for a mouth. And it looked a lot like the thing from Spirited Away. And I was like, that's weird, and like I kind of wrote it off because I only saw it for a second. Like I only saw it for one moment, and then I was like, I walked over and I just walked to right where it was. I saw it standing, and I started meditating. And then after I meditated for a little bit, I don't know how to explain it other than it took me over, and I got up and I looked at my hands, and I looked around at the trees, but it wasn't me. It was like that's the first thing you'd do if you took over an avatar. You'd look at your hands, like move them around,
Uh-huh.
look around you, and that's what it did. It moved at my hands and kind of looked at them like, oh, okay, and then looked around. And I was like, holy shit, hell no. And then
Wow.
yeah, and so I snapped out of it, and then just like how you saw me at Montauk when I did that ritual, I was talking in like a language and stuff. I like clapped my hands and just something took me over, and I had to banish the thing.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I did all this magic to like banish it from me. And then I created this circle of like light in that area, so I couldn't stand there anymore. And I went over by the fire and I put a circle around where we sat and we're hanging out. And it was funny because I looked and I could see that literally it was standing just outside the bubble of golden light that I had created.
Oh yeah.
Like it was waiting,
Oh yeah.
and I could see
Yep.
that there are all these other little ones following it. And there's 6 to 8 of them, little
Yeah.
ones that thing was like 8 feet tall, and then the little ones were like 3 to 4 feet tall.
Wow. Yeah, so you understand the power of protection out there. And that's something that we do every time my team and I we go out in the woods, we protect ourselves with the light. It's a spiritual thing. Absolutely. It's not just physical cryptids, okay, out there. There's spiritual things, there's energetics, and a lot of people don't understand how dangerous it can be out there in those woods. And so it is important to protect yourself spiritually in the light, and to we've had weird like interdimensional stuff happen out in the field, where things potentially may or may not have come out of like portals and stuff that open up right around our base camp. Okay, so and it is important for, and you two especially are very aware of the spiritual realm, and something more than just this physical body and this physical reality that we're living in. It's way more than that. So y'all are like beacons of light to all of the entities out there and all of the beings. So they're going to be watching you and be curious about you. And I mean, you guys are both pure magic. Okay. And magical beings are, magical beings are more, don't, are more prone to getting a lot of activity.
You're haunted. That's what I was telling
Haunted. Is that what you say? I say magical. You say haunted?
When she started dating me, I explained to her, like places like I used to think like places or things around me, like, oh, why are they? I realized eventually that I'm haunted. Like,
yeah.
It's not, and it's like the same thing. Yeah, it's like a person who has got all this stuff going on with them. Yeah, it's like all this stuff happens to me because of exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. That's why my team gets so much activity out in the field. I'm convinced it's not just the land that has all of the beings on it, all the cryptids, all the ETs and Sasquatch and Dogman and lake monsters, whatever. It's the people that are with us. Okay. We're all emitting some sort of a light, and we're very psychic. Okay. And you guys are both very psychic. And so you're going to connect. It's just an energetic thing. It's all about energetics out in the woods. It is really.
Have you ever heard of those beings that I was describing? Have you ever encountered them or heard of anybody else encountering them?
You know, we've encountered some weird stuff. Okay, we have encountered shadowy figures and shadowy beings. Like I said, that weird interdimensional thing that may or may not have come up near our camp one night. That was a black shadowy figure, kind of like that. I mean, but no, I have not heard of anything like that big that was like a blob with little blobs.
Yeah,
No, but
I
it's
remember another thing too is like because it was kind of psychically connecting to me. It saw
mhm.
me eating, and I remember how it thought it looked really weird because it
Yeah,
just like sucks energy from stuff.
yeah,
And so like me putting this food in my mouth and chewing it, I remember being able to sense it, thinking like how weird it was to watch that. So it was kind of like you're saying, it was curious, and then it taking me over too, curiosity. I don't
yeah,
even know that I wanted to do anything bad, but
yeah.
obviously that's not cool. And I think with the hand motions, they're sigils.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think
Mhm.
that it was trying to activate something or use her as a
Yeah.
physical activation beacon or something.
It wanted me to keep doing that. Like I literally could not stop my hand as it was moving, but I knew I had to because it was freaking me out so much.
Yeah, I would just suggest, like I said, y'all know I'm training that remote viewing stuff, and we're always taught like to not engage with like anything that we feel is like a lower vibrational energy like that, and that could be, I don't know, it just depends on how you're feeling. You got to go with your gut, and if it's like kind of a lower vibrational energy, don't engage with it and protect yourself. Okay, protect your energy field, because that's the way to go. Otherwise, you'll go home with hitchhikers. I've
Yeah,
actually come home with hitchhikers before. It's not that great.
I
You
yeah,
come
had
home with that.
I had my wand from Yvonne with us, and I kind of he told me to like use it to protect the circle around the fire, and I also did it around the car too because that's where we're sleeping. So not sponsored, but I go check out her shop if you can because they really do work wonders.
yeah, that's a very good, powerful tool.
Yeah,
Um,
crystals are very powerful too. If you've got like quartz, whatever. I mean, everywhere I go to all the investigations that I do and research areas, I always bring home pieces of quartz because it's so
yeah,
rampant. Everywhere we go, wherever there's Sasquatch activity, there's like a big vein of quartz.
yeah, Yvonne
Um,
also uses quartz in her stuff too. So
Yeah.
nice.
yeah, she
It's
mines her quartz
powerful.
and stuff. Yeah, yeah,
Nice. Yeah, it just goes hand in hand with a lot of this activity.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's
there's something to it.
well, it's like you said. Well, that rock, Council Rock at Montauk,
Oh,
it's a
yes.
crystal and it's an energy. Like it has memories in it. And if you're an adept, which I'm not even that advanced, I wasn't able to access it. But that's what was it Chastity that said that? I think it was Chastity that said that. Yeah, that she was the one that was explaining that, and that made perfect sense.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's like a whole thing that Tesla talks about is crystals, and you can store information in them.
that's
I,
right.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can. That's another thing that I learned from Yohanda. We keep on bringing her up, but
Yeah.
yeah, they can store information in them, and it's it's one of those things that we kind of don't understand that well right now. But I'm pretty sure you can even use them for like free energy type scenarios and stuff. There's so much stuff you can do with crystals, and it's not just like hippy dippy
Mhm.
like pseudoscience kind of stuff. There's something actually going on there, like you know what I mean, like
Mhm.
that maybe science as it now isn't doing a good job proving it, but that doesn't mean it's not provable. Like
That's right.
I think that's a big misconception too, is like with the stuff that you're talking about and what you're doing with Bigfoot and everything else, it's like, well, the mainstream science people are, well, we're all kooks and nuts and loons because we can't prove it. But in order for science to prove something, you need to have an instrument that can measure it. For instance,
Mhm.
let's say you had a radioactive thing, like a piece of uranium that was irradiating and causing damage to people. If you didn't have a reader that sensed that radiation, the only way you'd really know about it is the side effects of it. Like, oh, well, there's
Mhm.
something weird going on. Like, people are getting sick. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on here? And it'll take a while to figure out, oh, it's that thing. And it's like, if you don't have all the information, if you don't have all the right tools to measure it, et cetera, then yeah, you're not going to understand it. And I think that's just a really sad state of affairs that we're in as a whole of humanity, where they try to debunk things because they say, oh, well, science can't prove it. And it's like, science can't prove it right now because it doesn't
Mhm.
have the tools to measure it. And even sometimes, a lot of times, science has proved it, and they're just
Yeah.
ignoring it and making sure that people don't realize that and follow the money with, kind
Follow
of.
the money.
Yep,
That's right.
exactly. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I got a fun fact for you. So, whenever my team's out in the field, we carry Geiger counters, Geiger meters, which measures radiation. And anytime we have paranormal activity out there, from Sasquatch to weird noises to disembodied voices to light beings, UFOs, we get a spike of radiation. Okay. And so that's another thing that actually happened when we had that portal that opened. If you guys want me to tell you about that. Oh, before I
yes.
talk about that, though,
Talk about the portal all day if you want
yes.
to.
Okay. So, Quantum Bigfoot, that is a book by Ron Moorhead. That's one of the best books ever written about Bigfoot. Okay. It's Sasquatch. So, if anybody's curious, y'all go, if you want to know the real deal about Sasquatch, read Quantum Bigfoot by Ron Moorhead, or Ronald. I think it's Ronald Moorhead on his book. But that's a great book. Okay, so this portal that we had open up in the field. Okay, so out in the field, we got this place we research is called the Meadow, and it's at an undisclosed location here in the South. We don't give our locations away, but it's out in the middle of the woods, deep woods, and there's this open field. It's like, I'm going to say like 4 or 5 acres or something. I don't even know. I don't know land mass. Okay. So I don't know. It's a few acres or a couple. I don't know. But it's open field. Okay. And from day one, let me tell you how we pick our spots to go research is if we hear stories about ghosts, a ghost road, or a pig man, or a goat man, or any kind of local legend and lore. Usually if you go to a spot like that, there's a whole bunch of activity, and it's not just that legend. Okay. And so in this area, there was a story of a ghost road. And so the team, some of the guys have been going out there for a little while to go research, and they were getting Bigfoot activity, orbs. We have so many orbs out in the field, balls of light, things that like follow us around. I mean, I've even had fog that chased us one night that felt like it had a consciousness to it. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah,
That was one of the scariest nights that I've ever had out in the woods, actually.
wow.
Yeah.
That does
Was
sound
that
wild.
night.
It's
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. Like on the way home, we coincidentally listened to this podcast
Yeah.
about Sweden.
Mhm.
Do you remember the guy's name?
Let me look it up.
They interviewed this guy for one of this podcast she really likes. Conspiranormal. It's a little more nuts and bolts than the stuff I like to. I like to go straight to like, but he was just talking about like how in Sweden, like so much of the population lives rural, like in the woods, and they just talk about this stuff and they know it's real, like gnomes and
Fred Anderson.
and
That was
Fred Anderson's the
book is
guy's
called
name.
Northern Lights.
And yeah, and in like they're talking about how in Iceland, like there's even this like highway they're gonna build through this forest, and they had to divert it because they knew that's where the fairies live.
Yep.
That actually happened. Like,
Wow.
and it's just wild to me. Like, I don't think it's not necessarily that these things aren't provable or they don't exist. I think it's more or less that we have been intentionally mind controlled, brainwashed, whatever you want to call it, to believe they don't exist. And there's a truth to the fact that when you leave the cities and you get out of these population centers that are full of people and you go out in the woods, weird stuff like what happened to
Yeah.
us can happen to you, or like what
Yeah.
happened to you too. Like it's more likely to happen. And just being out in the woods and experiencing that yesterday, you could
Yep.
feel the energy of like,
Mhm.
it's just like foggy and spooky.
Yeah.
And she was just saying like, I can feel something weird's going. Like,
Feels witchy. Yeah.
Like I could feel something was there even if I couldn't see it.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
actually, eventually, the gears got turning, and I was able to see it. And a normal person that wouldn't have been able to see it. It was like a ghost. Like, because I have that ability, kind of. Like, I can't like turn it on when I want it to. It just comes and goes. But like, I'm slightly a medium, so like, this thing was definitely like of the spirit world. But I saw it. And when I sat in its space, I felt it, and yeah, it was very interesting, and it's just there's so many different creatures like this and stuff. You said like even floating fog and
Yeah. fog with a consciousness to it. And and there's stories from all over the country, because I do several live shows every week, and I'm a host at Spaced Out Radio, and so I bring people on my shows to talk about cryptids and cryptid sightings and cryptid research, which cryptids are basically anything that's like not scientifically proven, okay, like things like Bigfoot and Dogman. And so we talk about a lot. I get a lot of stories from people, and also I do a show where I do remote viewing targets, these blind targets. They're tasked to me by people like my buddy Barry Littleton and other friends who know how to task me these targets. And a lot of times they're very interesting, like the Gugway. Now, a Gugway is a Sasquatch. They say it's like a mutated Sasquatch that will eat people. Okay, it's like violent kind of. And in Yellowstone Park, is known for having this fog, and they say that Gugway hide in the fog and kidnap hikers. Okay, that was one of my targets for my remote viewing show that I did. Yeah, so we get stories like that. We just add it to the list of possible ways these hikers are going missing and people out of the parks. But yeah, going into the woods is refreshing. It's a reset button. I highly recommend everybody do it. We all need to do it. That's something that we have been separated from.
I spend
for a long time.
as much time in the woods as possible. I want to live in the woods. Like I want to just have a house in the UP. That's the dream for me. Just out in the middle of nowhere, no internet, just a bunch of books everywhere. That would be the dream for me.
It would be, and because you experience things out there that you won't get that experience anywhere else other than in the woods. And what I like to tell people is, I feel like the consciousness of the planet is raising one Bigfoot sighting at a time. Okay. Because when you see things that aren't supposed to exist, it really raises people's consciousness, no matter how traumatic this stuff
I
is.
remember that moment for me. Like when I was in second grade, I'm sure a lot of stuff happened and they mind wiped me, but when I was in second grade, I remember the first time I saw a flying saucer in broad daylight, and just being like, "What the?" And it was the most bizarre thing because I remember I asked the adults in my life, the authorities, right, about it, and some of them were pretty honest. I remember there was a pastor from the church that I went to, and he was pretty honest. He was like, some people in the church, they try to say that stuff don't exist. If people see it, it's got to be real. He's like, I believe you, son. There's some things we can't explain. But there are other teachers I remember telling, like teachers and stuff, like, you didn't see that. I'm like, no, I saw it. Like it was floating in the sky. And they're like, nah, you didn't. You're hallucinating, or you saw a plane or something. I'm like, no, it was a flying saucer. Like it was just floating there. And they're like trying to gaslight me and tell me it wasn't there. And that reaction from people, like even the pastor that told me about it, was like, he wasn't supposed to tell me this. He's like, keep this between me and you, but I believe you saw it. I believe, there's things we don't. And it's just like, that's the reaction though. And like, even me, like I posted the thing when we were at the gas station, like I posted about the cryptid that we saw and how it took me over and everything else. And I got a lot of normie friends on Facebook still. And I just kind of thought like the judgment of it and like how people are going to judge me they're going to think I'm crazy for posting that. Like, how do all the things happen to art? Like, but they do.
Well, I was there and it happened to me first, right?
And I just think that like then we listen to that podcast and it kind of reinforced because like no, this stuff is real. Like this happens to lots of people. The guy that was in the interview himself, that Fred guy, he went into it a skeptic that was like working for a TV show where they went into haunted houses. And it's kind of like the same thing with you, except he was less open to it at first, but like it was where it started with one thing and then he worked his way up to like, this is all real. Like, holy crap. You know what I mean? Like all of it, like not
all of it. That's right.
All of it. Like,
yeah. And it's like more than what we can even imagine. I mean, at this point, like there's no veil, back when I first started doing this research and stuff, I was like, oh, the veil is thinning, eventually it's like people are having more experiences, more people are talking about it. Now it's like, there's no veil at all. Like, there's so many experiencers with not only Sasquatch and Dogman and lake monsters and
Fox News
and little people,
like the incident in Las Vegas where the cops showed up and there was like, the spaceship crashed and they're like each walking around, and it ended up in like normal news outlets and stuff, and people are kind of just like kind of scratching their heads like, so this is just the world we live in now, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's people like us that are like very skeptical of the media and our governments. And we're like, well, why are they letting us see this now? Or is it a psyop? You know, like what in the heck's going on? I mean,
think what it is they tried to hide this stuff from us. This is what I think it is. They tried to hide this stuff from us. They still would like to if they could, but the reality is we have the internet, and so the truth is going to come out. And either way, no matter what they do, some of the truth, if not all of it, is going to come out. And I think that they're just realizing like they have to adapt us to the change before it happens. Like even stuff like the show Rick and Morty, a cartoon, you know.
oh
Like,
yeah, they got portals.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's concepts that they explain in that show where it's like it's funny, like they, you know, like it's like a kid can watch it. It's got some like, you know, childish humor and stuff at the times, but like it's explaining really intense concepts, like, you know, like one of the Ricks going around and traveling and try to find one of the Ricks from an alternate reality that like fucked him over. That kind of shit's real. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Like it's real. There are people that are hunting the alternate, going through all the realities, looking for a certain version of themselves and stuff like that. That stuff is real. And even with the Marvel movies, like Quantum, Ant-Man and Wasp, Quantum Reality, and all this stuff, they're preparing people. They're trying to make them understand that not only are the aliens and stuff like that real, and the cryptids and stuff like that, but the alternate realities and everything else.
And cartoons other than Rick and Morty, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. My son, that was one of his favorite cartoons. And they're doing alternate realities. There's like all these different dimensions and they all overlap sometimes. And I feel like that's kind of like what happens when we're out in the field and like we're having all this activity. It's almost like the dimensions are kind of overlapping or something.
I have this theory and I'm not able to prove it, but I really do believe there's some sort of truth to it. And I really want to go down this rabbit hole and kind of, a lot of my research is revolving around this right now, but I don't talk about it because I'm still researching it and I want to have like a good synopsis of it. But I believe that the original version of Earth that we existed on in the times where they talk about dragons and everything else, and it was 432 hertz frequency. Like, okay, like our brains are like a radio, our consciousness, and we're tuned into a certain frequency. And it was 432, and they're trying to bring it to 440. And so it's like, that's the reason why like the fairies are there and the Bigfoot are there, but they're not there because it's like we're a radio and we're like almost on the same tuning, almost on the same frequency, but we're slightly out of phase. So that's why we interact with each other sometimes and weird things happen, is because it's like we're almost inhabiting the same time space, but not quite.
I agree with that statement. 100%. I think that is the case, just like with ghosts and spirits. Like, where do we go when we die? You know, all that kind of stuff. I think that we're just like on just another level, another frequency. It's all about frequencies. You're 100% right. Now, there are also, okay, this is like a huge debate, right? In the cryptid community is like, well, what is a Bigfoot? Is it flesh and blood and bone, or is it supernatural? And I'm always like, they're both. Why can they not be both? Like, humans are supernatural and we're flesh and bone. You know, humans can go in and out of portals. I mean, you know, okay. So two of our teammates walked into a portal in the middle of the field, and they didn't even know they were walking into it. They were sent over because a big square, a cube, showed up in the middle of an open field, and you could only see it through thermal imaging devices. Okay. And this thing was big. It was like the size of like a small shed behind your house, kind of. That's how I usually describe it. And it just showed up and it looked like it had windows and a door on it. It was just weird. And some of the guys on one small team from one side of the field radioed over to the guys across the field to go check it out. And 3 of the guys walked over to it. 2 of them were retired military guys, one special forces, the other one's in the Navy, search and rescue guys, remote viewers too, by the way. And we're trained to like pick up on energy shifts and be aware of our surroundings all the time. They were guided over to this cube. And as they walked over to it, they couldn't see anything. It was just an open field. And as they walked up to it, their heat signatures disappeared. And we have it on video. Okay. And they said that when they got inside it, they didn't know they were inside. The environment changed. Okay, the ground went from vegetation and like muddy or grass or whatever to like smooth. The stars disappeared out of the sky, and they said the temperature was a little different. They said it was like walking through a black velvet curtain. That's how they both described it. Okay, well, there was a little spike of radiation in that area. When they realized that something was off, they backed out, and their heat signatures reappeared on camera. Okay, fast forward a little bit, both of them got very sick, and one of them has passed away since then, and the other one got a very aggressive form of cancer. The gentleman who passed away, he got a bad heart condition, and so we're not saying it was 100% that portal. We call it the portal because we don't know. Oh, and by the way, when they came out of it, it shrunk down, and then it moved and it disappeared. So was that a portal? What was that? I mean, it could have been like a aircraft, like a UFO or something. I don't know. We call it the portal though, but we're not sure exactly what it was. Super strange, right?
Yeah, it's not the only time that anything that like when we were listening to that podcast earlier, there's similar stories to stuff like that happening to people. Like
Really?
Swedish countryside, like yeah, similar stories where like they're like, yeah, it's not the only time that. Not exactly the same, but like I've also heard stories of people like walking or like when they get abducted. Like I'm not saying it was an abduction; it sounds more like a portal, but I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but someone will see like it as an ambulance or something like that, the craft, and then another person, even in the same time space, they'll see it as like a cabin or something like that on the side.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So it's like
absolutely.
it can mess with your perception of like what you're actually looking at.
Yes.
And so like when you put that aspect of it into play, it's like
yeah,
that's wild. And I think that's where the shape-shifting reptilian kind of thing comes from, is if beings are advanced enough, they can go into your mind and telepathically make you see whatever they want you to see. And it's something that's really hard for people to wrap their mind around, but I do believe that's true.
Okay. I have a quick story, and it's about shape-shifting Sasquatch. Squirrel versus Sasquatch. Okay. I've had two different reports, two different times. We've gotten reports of people encountering what some of the people there saw was a squirrel, and the other people there saw a 7 to 9 foot tall Sasquatch. I mean, what are the odds? Isn't that weird? It's like, okay, I'll just give you an example. So there's a state park here in Georgia, and I was called by a park ranger who worked there, and he knew a friend of mine. She was like, "Oh, my friend Jessica is a Bigfoot researcher. Let me get in touch with her," because he had taken like 9 or more reports at his state park. And by the way, that state park is right beside where the Georgia Guidestones were located. Okay, so it was in that area.
Weird.
Yeah, so a lot of weird stuff there. The ley lines, they call that. I think the Native Americans called it like the belly button of the world or something in that area. Okay, so a lot of high strangeness out there, and so he called me up, and I got FaceTimed with him because I like to see people's faces. Like I want to know like if they're telling me the truth, so they know it. And so he was saying, one of the accounts was that some people were hiking back to their tent one night or their campsite, and they were walking down a trail, and there were two people in the front, 2 people in the back, like a few feet behind them. The 2 people in the front saw a gigantic Sasquatch, or like a big monkey looking thing, jump down from the tree and land on the ground. They took off running and flew past their friends, and the 2 friends saw a little squirrel on the ground. That's all they saw. So it just didn't make any sense. Well, I took that report and I was like, okay, well, that's cool. I don't know. We went and investigated the place. We didn't find a whole lot of activity there when we were there. But then I got the same report from somebody else that there was a shape-shifting squirrel Sasquatch. So there's something to it. I mean, people just don't make this stuff up, I don't believe.
Yeah, I think that we're not able to understand the way reality works, sort of like, Carlos Castaneda talks about it in his books. I don't know if you've ever heard of that guy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he talks about, you can shapeshift. And he, saw his teacher shapeshift, and I think he might even eventually do it. I read those books like so long ago, like when I was like a teenager. But I believe it's real, and I believe that just all of it, all over the map, like there's something to it.
I mean, the Native Americans have the skinwalkers, and that's something. Because see, I do a lot of research into like the werewolves and dogman. We get dogman reports pretty often around here, and there's like shape shifting, werewolves and things like that. I mean, it's really interesting, and a lot of it. I've been tasked with targets for remote viewing of, I guess you could say, like werewolves or dogmen and things like that. And sometimes this data includes like rituals, like dark magic, black magic, and blood rituals. And there, you would probably not be shocked. You guys wouldn't be shocked that we get a lot of cryptid reports around Civil War battlefields.
Wow.
Where there's been a lot of bloodshed. Okay, there's cryptids out there, dark entities and things like that.
They feed off that energy.
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Yeah, we've got an entity up here in Georgia at the Chickamauga battlefield named Old Green Eyes, and Old Green Eyes that was actually one of my remote viewing targets, and I was seeing what looked like a gugway, one of those really scary Sasquatches, but it was seen during the Civil War. That battle, 34,000 men died over 3 days on that battlefield.
Wow.
And they say the story went that this entity was seen out there eating the bodies of all the dead soldiers, and it's there to this day, actually.
Eating dead bodies.
Yeah. Wow. Really, really strange stuff, but yeah, a lot of things lurk around those battlefields.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? I feel like we did a really solid hour. I feel like this is one of my favorite interviews I ever did.
You should tell her about the
oh, cool. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I did encounter some Sasquatch while we were out there too.
Awesome. Heck yeah.
Yeah, I got into a very spiritual state. It happens a lot when I'm out in the woods because I'm not by the Wi-Fi signals. They're mind control. They're keeping me in a low vibrational state. That's why I love being in the woods so much. And I was just having like a break. Like I could sense them around me, even though I couldn't see them. And they're all around us. And I kind of altered out, and I feel like I was Jacob. And I apologized to them because one of the reasons why they hide from us and that they don't like humans and they're kind of afraid of us is because of what happened with we did something really bad to the Sasquatch. I don't even want to go into it, but I feel like it has something to do with Montauk, and I apologized to them, and I got like kind of like the download that like I don't know if it was like them telling me or what, but like that Montauk, which I talked about in the interview that'll come out before this one, is the ritual that you guys did where we all did it, but you guys were like in the outer ring, and it was at the ley line at Montauk. We were doing some energy work, we're healing energy there, and all these Sasquatch appeared all around us. And anyway, like I got not that it should have been obvious, like, but I got the download that like you guys were supposed to be.
Did y'all see that?
What?
I just had an orb float in front of me, and I've got goosebumps all over my body. That was weird. It was on the camera. I saw it. I was actually looking. And as I'm watching it, I'm getting goosebumps. Yeah, that was weird. We'll have to rewind that.
Well,
that was weird.
Well, think about what I was talking about.
Exactly. I mean, that was obvious, y'all. I don't think that was a bug because I wouldn't be covered in goosebumps.
Did an energy healing ritual there that's tangible. And you were supposed you were connected to these beings somehow. And so is Mike. What's Mike's like internet name?
That's Long Island Bigfoot. Long Island Bigfoot Mike. Yeah. Y'all go subscribe, please.
Yeah. He's a great guy. He's very awesome. I love him because he's such like a Long Island guy, like, fucking super just like down to earth. But then like if you talk to him, he's like very spiritual and very intelligent and like super awesome guy. I really like him. I gotta have him on the show sometime. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought, I guess it's a good
and then
idea.
the next morning, like he was like gathering firewood and stuff, and he's like, he says to me like, did you make, and then he made this little like, this like a whistling noise. Yeah, and I was like, no.
I was like literally like right to the left of me. I heard clear as day, Babu. And it was like, you could tell it was like a shorter one, so it must have been a kid. And I was just like, I literally had to like walk back and be like, Kat, did you just go Babu? But even though that doesn't make sense because it came from the left of me and not where she
even
was.
if I had, it wouldn't have been
human.
Able to hear
it was a very human. It wasn't a bird or something. It was really like Babu. I was like, wow, like, so I think it was one of the kids, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening in the woods, and then like I said, I feel all crazy, like on the way home, kind of like, am I just nuts? Like, right? Like, I'm
No,
just nuts.
you're not nuts.
And no, like that was the perfect podcast to listen to, because I got the connection to Sweden with SSP, which is why we put it on. But then it ended up applying to
exactly what we experienced.
Yeah, exactly what we were experiencing. The fact that like the woods are enchanted and there's energy in the woods, and you're open to all these things, and just makes me want to live in the woods that much more. Not that the desert will be too bad, but living in the desert.
There'll be a lot of stuff going on in the desert, I bet.
Oh, they've got giants out there. That's not too far from like Lovelock Caves and stuff, where the redheaded giants lived, and
there's just
lots of activity out there.
We've explored a lot of the Midwest, so it's time to maybe it'll be cool to explore a lot of the neat stuff up there. There's also a giant pyramid in this lake, Pyramid Lake, that's not too far away from
Yes, I've heard of that.
And then there's Lake Winnemucca, the dried up lake, where it has like the oldest petroglyphs in North America. Like, I think they're even older than the pyramids. So 2 hours away from where we're going to be. So we're definitely going to check that out for sure.
I'm excited. I'm going to come visit y'all too. Okay, I'm coming out.
You know, it's all Brian is. He's just like, everybody come out here, live out here.
Brian invited me too. I'm coming. Make room.
Well, yeah, it was such a great interview with you. You're obviously Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress. I'll have a link in the description so people can check out your channel. Also, the different radio shows and stuff like that you do. What are they? Why don't you replug them again?
Okay, I'll plug real quick. Yes. Okay, so I'm the Cryptid Huntress all over social media. Actually, my Twitter is like Huntress Jessica, because somebody already had the Cryptid Huntress a long time ago. But yeah, it's the Cryptid Huntress. I have a YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook, Jessica, the Cryptid Huntress. And I have a radio show. It's actually on YouTube. You can find me all over social media. It's Spaced Out Radio every Saturday and Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And I do live shows on my channel, the Cryptid Huntress, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thursday night's my remote viewing show. And I'm always talking about cryptids and weird stuff, time travel, all this fun stuff. Portals, whatever I feel like talking about.
Another thing is we need to schedule the interview where it's me, you, and Robert Shipe, so you can remote view those UAPs. Or how would that work? Would you normally want to remote ahead of time?
Yeah, I'll go over it with you off air, because you'll have to put it in. I've got a list of like stuff that people want me to review.
I think, because he's got some really cool information.
Thank you.
You can add to it, and I feel good about being able to connect those two worlds, because he needs a remote viewer on his case to help him understand it a little bit better, I think.
I'm on it, doggone it. Put me on it.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Jessica. Thank you to all the viewers for watching. We are the Disclosure. There's no need to wait. It's happening right now. And I'm gonna end the show now.
Thank you. Bye.